Startup Builder Live Q&A. This is the place for any startup founder to ask burning questions that are keeping you up at night and get answers from experts who have worked with hundreds of founders and their teams. Welcome, I'm your host today, Kirk Drage. I'm the CEO and co-founder at LeapSheep. At LeapSheep, we're on a mission to flip the 95% startup failure rate by making expert startup building guidance accessible, affordable, and personalized for all founders. I'm in the host chair today in place of the fabulous Sarah Bell, who is traveling throughout the UK this week. And today I'm joined by LeapSheep co-founder and expert startup building advisor, Terri Soar. Terri is our head of product at LeapSheep and has also worked with hundreds of startups, supporting them to get from idea to their first million in revenue. Welcome, Terri.
Hey.
And of course, a big welcome to founders who have joined us live. It's great to have you here, whether you're on YouTube or on LinkedIn. This show is all about supporting you to get to product market fit and scale up safely and avoid that 95% failure rate. Thank you to those of you who have sent in questions before the show. And if you've got questions, please drop them into the comments into LinkedIn or into YouTube, and we'll prioritize those questions. Well, today I'm absolutely delighted to have Dinesh Chandrasekhar with us. Dinesh is based in Silicon Valley, San Jose, California. Dinesh is a data management and product marketing veteran, thought leader, and practitioner with over 30 years of experience with brands like Hortonworks, Cloudera, and has been on the Forbes Communication Council. As the chief analyst and founder of Stratola, a business strategy consulting firm, he speaks and writes about the latest topics in data in motion, real-time analytics, IoT, observability, Gen AI, and more. He currently advises many startups and functions as a fractional CMO at several other companies. He also runs a podcast called Smart Talk, where he interviews C-suite executives and leaders of many of the top data management companies. Dinesh holds an MBA degree from Santa Clara University and a master's degree in computer applications from the University of Madras. Dinesh, so great to have you here.
Thank you, Kirk.
Thank you so much. Maybe I'll start off with a real softball question for you. What's your favorite restaurant in Silicon Valley?
Oh, that's probably the toughest question that I'm going to get in this session, because Silicon Valley is like known for its restaurants. You know, there are like multiple cuisines that you have, and so many different good restaurants. So I think it's going to be a really tough one to like pick one that is like my favorite. But I'd say pick any random Indian restaurant in the Bay Area and you'll never fail. You know, it's like
you're well served, right?
Yeah, so it's like that kind of a good place to be in. And there are some amazing Mexican restaurants in San Jose where I live that are also phenomenal. So any day you're on this side of the world, happy to take you to some of these places.
Yeah, awesome. I learned really early in my career. One of the first times I traveled to Seattle when I was with Microsoft, there were two restaurants next to each other, and one was absolutely booming, full, and the other one was empty. And in my wisdom, I thought, well, I'm going to go to the empty one. That's going to get me served way quicker. And of course, the food was terrible. What a rookie mistake.
Yeah.
You've got such an impressive career in the startup space. You've worked with scale-ups. Why is it that you've chosen to start to sort of work with earlier stage startups? Why does that suit you? And tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, if I flash back like 30 years, I started my career with a startup. I founded one when I started my career, like hardly fresh out of college, and I founded this company with a friend of mine. We were building financial accounting software back in India. And at that time, there weren't like that many QuickBooks kind of the world, out there. So we were like kind of very niche, focusing on small office, home office kind of markets. And it worked out really well, so we started really doing well in that local area that we were, building. We didn't scale that well. And then in hindsight, after like 3 years, we kind of closed up shop and we went our ways and all that. But in hindsight, that's what I feel like, if I had the vision that I have now, if I had the kind of knowledge that I had like gathered over like 30 years, I would have like done things differently. And I feel like I'm seeing that around me in the Bay Area, at least where there are like tons of startups that are sprouting up thanks to the Gen AI movement. And all these founders are kind of struggling with the same set of challenges even today, right?
Yeah.
Scale and product market fit and messaging and things like that. So I felt like, this might be kind of me giving back to the community, helping them out and, nurturing them from where they're struggling to be going to the next level.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I very much agree with you. I think there's just so much potential, and so many founders that you've met have got so much potential. And I think one of the challenges with the startup community is we've solved somewhat for the unicorn production rate. Like we've got Y Combinators, and we've got top tier VC firms, and we're improving the number of unicorns that we're building each year. We're in a bit of a sort of a blip at the moment, of course. But I think generally, if you look at the graph over the last 30 years, things are going up and to the right in terms of creating more high quality companies. But when you look at the other end, the number of failures that are happening, we really haven't solved the startup mortality rate. And there's just so many founders that are going through so much financial pain and emotional stress just because they can't get access to the support and guidance they need. It's not that their ideas are bad. In fact, their ideas are usually pretty good, and they just need to spend more time in the market to refine those ideas. And it's not that they can't execute. They just spending their time and money learning lessons that we've taken years and years to learn, that if we can get those lessons to them at the right place and the right time, they can avoid those mistakes and maybe make new ones.
Agreed. And there's a lot of putting the cart before the horse that I see as well, where kind of they get passionate about like their vision and they kind of build out the whole product and they wonder why nobody's biting. That's another challenge that I see as well. So it'll be good to kind of double click on some of those things during the session. I think it'll be good.
Yeah, 100%. Well, let's start with you've got some fabulous experience in product marketing, which I think is one of those things that depends on where you've come from as a founder. You may not even be aware that that's a thing that exists. Product management, product marketing, they're sort of specialist roles. If you've come from another startup or you've come from a large tech firm, you probably do. But if you haven't, maybe that's not something that you know about. So the first question we had sent in during the week was, what role does product messaging positioning play in helping startups stand out in a crowded market?
Yeah, I think that's a great segue to what we were just talking about. Most of the times that I interact with some of these startups and founders in the Bay Area, and there are some startups that I work with in India as well, who are trying to get a piece of the pie with the US market as well, trying to get the go-to-market strategies going within the US market. And all of them have the one challenge, which is how do I say something about my product the right way to the right audiences, right? So that's the struggle that they have. Even when I ask them, what do you do? It takes them at least like 4 or 5 minutes for them to explain what they do, which is by itself like a no, right? They talk about the classic 30-second elevator pitch all the time, where, if you are pitching it to an investor, writing an elevator, you need to be like succinct enough to like say what it is that you do in a very, very short time frame, and be able to convince the other person that, this is really valuable to the kind of personas that I'm serving to. But that's the challenge that most of these startups and founders face, where they don't come from that background. They don't come from a product marketing background. They come from mostly an engineering background, because they have this product vision. They build a product, and then they know that they're solving a problem. It's just that they do not know how to say it in the right words. Product marketing is one of those largely misunderstood, underrated, underappreciated departments in a lot of the organizations. That's kind of like where I come from. 12 years in product marketing. I've been there, been beaten up, risen back like a phoenix, done it all. But the real challenge is understanding that product marketing is going to be a very essential part of your startup journey, is something that all these founders need to realize. Even if you don't want to call it product marketing, have somebody that understands messaging very close to you, so that they can position your product, serve it up to the right audiences and say it in their language. You cannot go to a developer audience and talk about fluffy marketing language, or you cannot go to a C-level person and talk like, nerdy language. That's like kind of like the things that these people need to understand, that where product marketing can play a much bigger role in articulating that much effectively.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I agree with that so much. I mean, we see three really common things, and you mentioned one of them. That's the engineers, the technical guys that know their stuff technically, but they really struggle to communicate the business benefits and the problems that you're solving really effectively. And then the second group that we see is people that maybe come from industry or have done a lot of customer discovery, and they really understand the problem and they really understand what customers need. And the challenge there, of course, is whenever you become an expert in anything and you know more about the problem than the customer does, you start to assume what the customer wants, and therefore your messaging misses the mark, because the customer's not as advanced as you. They're not up to where you're at. And so that's a big problem. And then the third problem we see, which is, for every startup, including ourselves, is you're not going to get it right first time, and you have to experiment to figure out what words land, what words don't land, what objections you're getting, how you're communicating with clarity, and you're often just too close. Doesn't matter if you're an expert or not. You're often too close, and you need some external perspective.
Yeah, fresh set of eyes always helps.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I know, Terry, you've been pretty busy this week with founders, helping them get out and speak to customers. What have you noticed about helping founders with their messaging?
Yeah, I guess it depends on their background and their level of experience of, are they comfortable putting the messaging out there at all? Like even on social media, like what's their, I guess, temperament? So some people are raring to go and others aren't. And I guess you're going to get such a variety of founders and whether they need encouragement and that sort of psychological safety to feel that it's not the end of the world and progress over perfection. But most importantly, if you're talking about what you're passionate about and what you're interested in solving and helping people's pain points effectively, then that's probably the most thing, is to talk authentically about that, especially early in your startup journey. It's never too early to start that sort of messaging to get the ball rolling, to find people that have got a common interest or they've got those pain points. And then, over time, once you start to understand what the solution is going to be in more detail, obviously your messaging is going to evolve over time. You don't have to have it perfect from day one.
Yeah, that's such great advice. Just teasing out what you're saying there about, I like the phrase building in the open. Having the courage to be able to put your, this week's or today's messaging and positioning idea out in front of the customer in a very public way, and get some feedback. It's painful. It always feels a bit awkward because you know that it's not right and perfect, but it's progress over perfection. Get it out there, get some feedback, improve it, get the next version out there. It's the best way to go. And particularly if you're very early stage, I know this week we've been talking about some of the founders you've been working with that are still trying to figure out what is the problem worth solving.
Yeah.
You can do this with your problem-centric messaging. You don't have to have a solution or a product to start testing your product messaging and positioning. You can start with just the solution.
Yeah.
And if I may add to the positioning part of it, largely all of this is like messaging, right? But the positioning part of it is like most of the startup founders feel like, they are creating a brand new category, right? So this is like a very common thing that I hear, that, we are disruptive, we are creating a brand new category. There's nothing wrong with it, but if every founder that's coming out and saying that we are going to create a new category, it's not going to be easy. You just feel like, you don't have any competitors, which either is like, maybe completely true, or that, you've not validated the market enough to like understand who your true competition is, what your other customers are, or your prospects are like thinking about using or maybe already using. So you need to really do a validity check there about like, do you really want to create a new category? Because that's not easy either. It takes quite a lot of like effort and time to like create a new category. And then, or do you want to play in a category that is already popular, where there are like existing players, maybe the market is crowded there, but you have a very unique way of solving that particular problem. You can still tap into that existing crowded space and still emerge as somebody distinct and totally, unique with your set of differentiators. That is totally possible.
100%.
I've seen so many, companies come out like that. But that's one of the things that I feel startup founders need that clarity with, and product marketing can play a big role in helping them understand whether to like, go into an existing category or like completely create a brand new category or not.
Yeah, it's such a fabulous point. I think from a founder's point of view, you've got to be thinking about the long game. The eventually you might want to create a new category, but as you say, it's so expensive if you're the category creator, because if you're selling something new and customers are not searching for that, they're not there looking for that to get to customers, is so expensive and so difficult. Whereas you can start, as you say, in an established brand category, and start building some momentum, and then start to pivot and build your new market. You can have your cake and eat it too, but you've got to have the right kind of strategy in place. It's really good thought. Should we move on to the next question about how how founders refine their messaging, because it's one thing to figure out what market you're going after, what problem you're solving, what solution that you've got, but that first attempt doesn't always work, does it?
No, it doesn't.
How do you help founders through that process to figure out, am I just building the wrong business? Am I in the wrong market? Should I pivot, or should I persevere and refine? And if so, how to do that?
Yeah. So I think a good amount of customer interactions and market research is totally valuable when it comes to messaging. You need to definitely talk to your target audiences, target customers, and understand how they speak about the particular problem that you are trying to address with your offering. And that is very important, because if you speak their language, you can obviously connect with your target audiences. But in order to do so, you need to understand how they talk about it. So do more interviews, do more conversations with your target customers. Tell them
Great
that
advice.
here's what,
Great advice.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that I found practically valuable when I work with some of my clients and help them do that. One of the customers, or one of my clients, that is an in-memory database company, and they were trying to redefine themselves in the space where in-memory databases as a phrase has become taboo, because Gartner practically said, that's a dead space or something, right? Well, that's a different conversation for a different day. But because they're trying to reinvent themselves, the messaging has to change. How they talk about their offering, without having to completely re-engineer the product, and position themselves in a category where they may be already in an existing set of players, required me to talk with their customers. I understand the specific set of use cases the customers were using this offering for, how they were solving it, and all that. And the language automatically came from the customers, and that was something that I was able to incorporate into the messaging, and that started resonating very well. We were able to talk to or connect with the customers or the target audiences very, very effectively because of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of the startup founders miss out on, because they feel like, I know what I'm saying, or I know how to talk about my product, without validating it with the target audiences that they're targeting.
Yeah. I mean, I think you bring up such an important point that I know we constantly reinforce, which is you have to do this with customers. You can't just sit in the back room and come up with this messaging, right? You have to get out there and spend time with customers. The answer for what the right messaging is not in the building, as Steve Blank says. It's out of the building. You've got to spend time with customers.
Yeah.
So it's so good to hear you talking about that as part of the process.
Yeah.
And Terri, from your point of view, have you got any thoughts on how founders are refining their message? I mean, I know we spend a lot of time on user research, and user research is not something that any founder should expect to know how to do out of the box, and they probably need some advice and guidance on how to do that effectively, because there's good user research and there's bad user research, isn't there, Terri?
Yeah, exactly. So I think we've already talked, previously, it comes up time and time again, is to not put your bias into the questions that you ask during the user research conversations or market research conversations, whatever you want to call it. It's a real, you have to practice it. I think you do need to practice your questions with someone and see if you're, leading the witness, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because you really want to get just honest, just raw. You just want to see raw what people are thinking about, the problems that they're experiencing in particular, in their words, and which parts they get more emotional about, which ones are they most frustrated about, of course. And obviously unpack that a little bit more, tease it out, and you're trying to be a fly on the wall, imagining what was happening at that time for them, so you can really see exactly, if they got 3 or 4 things happening at once or whatever, to paint that picture. And so you can take all that sort of knowledge into, okay, I need to, figure out this messaging and, positioning, all of that sort of stuff that's going to then resonate with the next person's got the exact same problem, the same context, they're in the same part of the market. Yeah.
And there's a time to quality issue here as well, isn't there, when it comes to doing good quality user research? I think someone once told me about job interviews, like if you figured a job that you want, go interview with 20 other companies that are like that company, so you can practice the interview, And once you've got that practice under your belt, then go apply for the job that you want. And I think that's such good advice, and it kind of applies to this user research. Like the first 20 user research interviews that a founder does is really just building their competence. Their ability to actually run a high quality interview is not going to happen until they've got some experience under their belt. And it's easy for founders to go, I've interviewed 20 people. That sounds like a lot, but in reality, it's often not, is it?
It's not. And I also feel like a lot of the companies try to make messaging a lot more complex than what is required. You just need to be speaking in plain English, conveying what the product does and how it addresses the needs of the customer. And as long as you can do that, that's simple enough. Don't try to like throw so much jargon in it and try to make it like super complex. And then at the end of the day, you sound exactly like the 20 other competitors in the same space that you are, because you are trying to use or say the same words that they are saying. Oh, let's say scalable, let's say like flexible and this and that. So suddenly you sound exactly the same way as all the other 20 vendors. Instead, 100%. Like talk about the exact pain point and say, here's how we solve it, is a better way to like address messaging, which is not that complex to address, as long as you can use that kind of language.
Yeah, that's so true. And I love Michael Siebel's messages when he talks about this. He talks about be 100% clear and 50% accurate, not 50% clear and 100% accurate. Because if you're not clear, you just lose people. So yeah, it's such important advice.
And I think when we say accurate, we don't mean, we're not talking about misleading. What we're saying is you don't need to add all the 50 features and benefits that you've got.
Yeah.
No one's going to remember that. Less is more for them to remember to be memorable. Yeah.
So true. Let's talk on. Let's move on to my favorite topic, which is product market fit. And we love to ask all our guests about their view on product market fit, and what's your experience been with startups that have truly achieved product market fit, and what tips do you have, Dinesh, for startups to get there?
To me, product market fit is about repeatability. So when you have a product that is catering the needs of a particular target audience, and if that target audience is able to recognize that and they are able to purchase this repeatedly over and over again, then that tells you that you've achieved product market fit. Most of the startups, start with this vague idea of like, hey, I know this product solves this particular problem, let's build this. And then they build it full on and they wonder why it's not flying off the shelves. I've practically heard this from several CEOs that have said, I've got the best products in sliced bread, but it's not flying off the shelves. I don't know what to do. Right. And it's about making sure that you're selling it to the right audiences and saying the right language, just like what we spoke about. And if you don't do that, if you're not connecting with the right customer segments, with the right pain points, with this particular offering, you are not going to achieve product market fit. So my guidance with some of the early stage startups that I've worked with is start in an iterative fashion. Don't build the whole platform. Don't think that you have to have all the features and bells and whistles and then find the product market fit, because that's going to be the biggest challenge to do, because you are building it without validating it with the market, without validating it with your customers. So that is kind of retrofitting into a problem that probably doesn't even exist. But instead, if you start building an MVP, a minimum viable product, and with like a bare set of features, and taking it to the audiences that you feel are the ones that are having this pain point, and if they start loving it, what will happen is there is this ecosystem effect that where the customers start giving you feedback. Hey, I really love what you're doing, but I wish you added these features. Great. Now let's add like a few more features. Let's validate it with them again, right? Then you'll start seeing that repeatability. Then you'll start seeing customers wanting to buy more of your product, wanting more features, giving you more feedback. That to me is the product market fit that, all startups need to vie for. And I feel like, part of the problem is that people build a product or like, keep building their vision, investing more into engineering without like going to the market and validating it, first off, and not doing the iterative thing.
Yeah, so true. It's I think it's really, really good advice. It's building into your plan that you need time for that customer feedback and iteration, and so often we don't see that. And often, I mean, as Vinod Khosla has talked about, it's often investors that need to shoulder some of the blame for this. When they see a startup making revenue, they start pushing them to sell. But what you're talking about is really having time to do proper founder-led sales, which is really the learning period to get to that repeatability.
Yeah.
And once you've got to that repeatability, that's the time to hire a professional salesperson, not before.
Correct. But I also throw in one more thing, because you said founder-led sales. Absolutely yes. That's the way to start the process. But a lot of the offerings today, particularly in the Gen AI world of things, most of these are like SaaS offerings. Most of these are like throw it over the fence.
Product-led growth.
Right?
Yeah.
PLG is where the market is right now. So when you have that, you want to have these kinds of research questions, or like user surveys, or like guiding the user, or asking them if it is solving the particular pain point, understanding the user behavior on the product. All of this happens on the PLG side, and you need to collect that feedback and do that same iterative thing. It is not actually a salesperson collecting this feedback, but it's like the product itself doing that for you. And you need to be having those metrics and sensors in there in the product to understand the user behavior, understand what is it that they are loving more or using more versus what is it that they are not using, and figuring out how to like fine tune the product in the next rev. That will achieve product market fit, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we love the advice, the Paul Graham's advice, which is do things manually, do things that don't scale. So we often advise to founders who want to have a product-led growth motion, start off with a sales-led growth motion to get that understanding, because in the very early days, you're not going to get enough feedback through that instrumentation. You just don't have enough volume, and the sales-based approach is actually a better way to start for most companies, and then you can pivot into more of a product-led growth strategy. Sure. It's a bit of a hack. Terri, any thoughts from you on this?
Well, I think you guys are all covering it. In terms of, the early part of, there's obviously a phase getting to product market fit. So there's a number of milestones to get through. As you say, you've got that minimum viable product, and then it's a series of minimum viable products, isn't it? As you say, keep iterating it. So it's not just a one minimum viable product, and then you think, oh, I'm just that one step away now from product market fit. So I think that's a bit of a fallacy as well.
And
perhaps, spearheaded by media or headlines or whatever else. The reality of how these companies get to that successful product market fit is, I think, still very misunderstood.
Yeah. It's so important to surround yourself with people that are going to support you to do the right thing, because I think that's one of the things that actually derails founders, is they don't have the right support around them to help them do this iteration, because everyone wants to get to scale quickly. Everyone wants to go from I was a startup and now I'm a scale up.
Yeah. Now, getting to that 0 to 1 and 1 to 10 and 10 to 100 is always like, a phased approach, how you start with, like, as you said, founder-led sales, and then like PLG, and then like, actual scale achieving and all that. If I may add like one more point, I would also think from a product market fit perspective, startups tend to like focus more on feature functions, they love releasing like these, this is a cool feature, we should like get this out there, this will like excite our audiences and all that. More than the cool features part, I would prefer that we focus on use cases. If we build a product around a particular use case, if we are solving a particular pain point around that use case, I think that will also help you achieve product market fit even better. Sometimes the struggle that I see is there are some horizontal products that people build, particularly, again, referring back to the Gen AI age, a lot of these products are applicable across like multiple industry verticals. Then what you struggle with is you don't know where to start with. You cannot like blindly target like software engineers and like figure that, they will adopt it. Maybe there is a particular set of software engineers in the fintech space that are having this particular problem more than like the generic software engineer audience. So if you can even target a particular use case or a particular vertical first, you will start seeing the product market fit even better or immediately, and then start expanding beyond into like making it a truly horizontal case and all that as well. So sometimes it's the low-hanging fruit that you miss.
Yeah, such great advice. Yeah, we're saying that all the time to founders. I mean, everyone wants to build a platform and capture the entire market. And of course, we all want to get there. But again, it's all about how you get there. And as you say, if you can focus on a use case, generally start by being a solution product, and then expand into a platform over time by adding many solutions and adding many use cases. So yeah, great feedback. I love it. All right, let's switch gears now and start talking about some of the other expertise you have beyond just product marketing, and talk about data management. Data is it's just an ever-growing problem. Every year, this problem just keeps getting more sophisticated and more complex. So, what are the common mistakes that you're seeing with startups and data management?
So I don't think there is a very generic problem that I can address and say, this is what like all startups are doing. I think it varies from people to people. But the one common thing that I find that is the order of the day is data governance and security. I think that's one big challenge that a lot of the startups miss early on, and try to retrofit some of the other boundaries and walls later on, checks and balances, if you will, on that to make sure that the data is protected. But with all the different regulations and data breaches and everything that are happening around us, it is very, very important that you start looking at the data in a very, very microbial way to understand how do I protect the personal information of my customers in such a way that it doesn't get exposed, it doesn't have kind of the data breaches and all that. So ultimately it's about data. Like all these companies that are thriving, it's all about the data underneath their hub that is driving their offerings. So you need to practically make sure that that data is protected in the right way. I talk about data in motion, which is like my thing, when I have my podcast and I talk about that, which is all about real-time data, real-time analytics and all that. And this is an exploding space, which is data coming in from all different types of streams and pockets and devices and whatnot. And you could talk about providing real-time analytics on it, or you can talk about all these different use cases and problems that you're solving using this data in real time and so forth. But what happens to the data ultimately is what everybody will care about. I read this news just in the last week. We had around pretty much practically all our social security numbers in the US, and I think even in the UK, that have been exposed. It's out there on the dark web, and that's one use case. And then we saw this issue with Snowflake and CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is probably not a data breach, but I'm just saying there are multiple such use cases that keep happening over and over again and again, that you kind of wonder what is it that these startups need to focus on. And to me, that's where it is. Data governance and security is what they need to practically focus on to ensure the customer as well that your data is safe in my world and you can trust us working in this relationship.
Yeah, 100%. So do you recommend startups chasing certifications like ISO 27001, that sort of thing?
Absolutely, right. So it depends again on the use case too. If there is a lot of PII information that they are storing, personally identifiable information about the customer that they are storing, then they need to make sure that they get all these certifications, SOC 1, SOC 2 type of compliance certifications. If you are in the financial space and all that, it's super important.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff that I would encourage them, because that also assures the customer. No customer in their right mind would say, well, take my credit card number. I don't know who you are, but take it, right? Nobody would say that. But as long as you can assure them saying, we got your data protected, we don't store your credit card numbers and this and that, that is what saves your business at the end of the day. So you need to definitely make sure.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and Terri, what are you seeing with the founders you're working with around data? Are they is this an issue they struggle with? What's your thoughts here?
Yeah, I will. A lot of the founders I'm looking at, I'm working with, are a little bit earlier in the phase, but they're definitely needing to be mindful of this sort of stuff. Obviously, their offerings are online. They're having to collect information, so it's something that needs to be as part of their road. It needs to be on their roadmap item of how we're going to tackle this. So
yeah, 100%. Excellent. Let's move on and start maybe chatting about the topic of the moment, which is Gen AI, and what sort of advice would you give to founders who are looking to incorporate Gen AI into their products or services?
Well, first off, don't use Gen AI if you don't have Gen AI in your product set. Because that's something that everybody wants to do these days, right? Even if you don't have any kind of AI capabilities, they want to like add AI enabled or AI powered and this and that.
Yeah.
Just so their messaging looks cool, their product gets noticed or something like that. So that's kind of like the first principle that I would say when it comes to like messaging and positioning. Don't say it if you don't have it. It's okay that you're not AI powered, but you might still be like the best thing in that particular space that you're serving. So say the product what it does, for what problem you're solving, that's okay. Again, it goes back to like not using buzzwords. But when it comes to actually incorporating Gen AI into the products and services, I would say we have come to a point in the industry. I think we've crossed that even inflection point, I would say, where it's no longer a buzzword anymore, where it's no longer like is it going to like fade away in like 6 months kind of a thing. I think we are way past that. There are hundreds of like an applications I've seen where it changes the lives of people that are using it. Even as a marketer, I use like several such Gen AI tools that help me with whether it be copywriting or whether it be like branding exercise or building websites or whatnot. It's like so easy than what it used to be before. What took me like several days to build, suddenly it's a matter of minutes that I can build it. Yesterday I was looking for an image that you know I didn't find an appropriate image even on Shutterstock, but then I went to a Gen AI tool to like generate one of my own, giving description. I got the perfect image, right, in a matter of like seconds. So that's what is happening today. So I think we are way past that inflection point, and it's very real now. So when you incorporate Gen AI into your product or service, make sure it's like serving or changing or improving the productivity of your target audiences, which is very important.
Yeah.
Because Gen AI is like very user facing. It's not like something hidden in the back end. There are hundreds of like agents that are coming forth, and everything is very user facing. So you want to make sure that you incorporate your Gen AI capabilities more user facing, more on the front of like improving the productivity, boosting the productivity of the user. One other example that I would give you is I'm working with a client of mine that is actually serving up financial institutions, with the automation software. That's what they're doing. And in this, the Gen AI capabilities are like mind blowing, where it is like changing the life of a loan processor in terms of like taking in a set of documents. It is automatically able to like extract all the information, provide you with like here are the things that you need to know out of these like 60 different PDFs and all that, and telling you exactly where the specific things that you need to focus on. Here the little compliance issue that I'm noticing and things like that, right? What used to take them like 2 or 3 days to like sift through all these different PDFs, now it's like already serving you up and making sure that you can focus on the right things, changing the productivity like multifold. You can process a loan in a matter of like seconds instead of like having to wait for like 2 or 3 days for a decision. So that's the kind of offering that you want to like build forth. Don't just like use Gen AI because of it, because the high or the challenge to this is the cost angle. A lot of startups don't recognize that there is a huge cost angle when you incorporate Gen AI and LLMs into this. That at the front it doesn't seem like it, but you will start feeling the burn once you put the feature out there.
And that cost is largely being subsidized at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
By investors and the large tech firms. So we're not feeling the full weight of cost of these solutions yet.
Yeah. The ROI is like a big thing when it comes to like these solutions. So definitely watch out for that. Don't just feel pressured because your competition is using it. I need to use it, but use it for the right reasons. If you can truly change the productivity of some user that you're targeting, do it. But also watch out for the costs.
Yeah, I really love Ben Evans' comment. He's former Andreessen Horowitz VC. He talks about the car industry. The first 100 years was figuring out what a car was and how to build them. Sorry, the first 50 years of the car industry was what's a car and how to build it, and the second 50 years is okay. Now we've got this car thing. What do we do with it? And that enables us to build drive-through restaurants and all kinds of different business models that are related to having a car as a platform essentially. And I think that's really an interesting take on the AI space. Is we're still really in that space. Is what really is AI? What can it do? How can we build it? We're still figuring all of those things out. And it's not until we get to some high level of maturity that will really start to see a takeoff. And we saw that with with the internet industry. That's the whole boom and bust in the 99 2000. Everyone sort of envisioned what could happen, and largely they were right about the kinds of companies that could be built. It just took us another decade or so to actually build those companies and have all that infrastructure there. And so it's really easy to get sort of ahead of yourself and see where the future's going and overinvest. And that's one of the key, I think, mistakes that we've learned about, how to and how not to build startups. Is timing is so important to get right. But I think the other thing that I see is, just how valuable a lot of these Gen AI tools are, as you said, for employee productivity within a startup. And so using it for your employees as opposed to using it for your customers, as you say, if there's a use case for it, absolutely go for it. But if there's not, don't try and shoehorn it in there. But internally, you can get massive productivity improvements if you adopt these tools. And I feel like we're kind of in that moment, a bit like, the early 2000s where, a few people knew about Google and were using Google, and most people still weren't using Google. And the ones that were using Google looked like a bit magicians for how much knowledge they knew and what they were able to do. I feel like we're kind of in that same area where the future's here. It's just not very widely distributed.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot of knowledge sharing that still yet is to happen. That I think it'll happen with the community effect. I start using it, my son will start using it, my peer will start using it, colleague will start using it. It'll just spread like that. I think that's all 100%. It is. It's a matter of time when Google is probably replaced by a Perplexity or somebody like that as well. Changing the way how we do search as well is also going to change because of some of these tools. So it's all bound to happen. So I'll add one more caution to the AI angle, Gen AI angle, I would say, is the tight coupling to some of these LLMs out there, right? So what happened a few months ago or a couple of months ago, I forget, when Sam Altman and the big Ooster and everything else happened with OpenAI, there's an entire ecosystem of startups that were dependent on OpenAI suddenly felt like, oh my God, am I going to have to shut down my doors, right? So this was a very real situation that just emerged because they were largely dependent on OpenAI and its models. And suddenly when there was this chaos happening at the hub, the startup ecosystem suddenly felt jittery. They were not sure if they were going to go forward or have to shut down their doors. So I think that woke up a lot of people to believe that, okay, I should not be tightly coupled with one model. Let me make it open. Let me make it interoperable with a bunch of different models and companies. And I think that should be the take as well. If you are building something, don't make it completely dependent on a particular model, because this space is fast changing, so fast changing. Yesterday somebody released a new model. That's the talk of the town. 2 days from now, literally, there'll be another model that'll be the talk of the town again. So you cannot be dependent on one single thing and think that I'm going to build my product on that.
Yeah, I mean, we always advise startups to be careful about partnering with other startups. If you've got any company that hasn't yet reached product market fit, you may not be in business. And OpenAI hasn't reached product market fit yet. I mean, they've got lots and lots of users, but if you look at the data, a lot of those users have not come back. They've had a look at it, and then they've gone away. And so building an entire stack on top of them is still very high risk at the moment. Yeah, Terri, I know you've been doing a bit of work with some Gen AI startups. And I think one of the big problems is sort of what Dinesh was saying before, which is about use case, isn't it? It's What have you experienced in this space?
It's interesting. I think the general vibe, if you want to call it that, amongst founders is a bit of a fear of missing out. Oh my God, my product needs to include some element of AI. There seems to be this sort of community social pressure now, expectation to have AI. It's oh, your product doesn't have an AI and it's meant to be a digital product.
What's wrong with you?
Not quite sure about that. So there's this actual anxiety that's actually coming through now for founders, worrying about it's actually considered a risk. When you're horizon scanning and you're checking all the aspects of are you in the right place at the right time, etc. AI is now a thing, and not everyone's equipped to deal with this. And as you say, I don't think anyone is, because there's still just so much figuring out for it to happen. It's going to take a while, but people obviously want to get on with their startup now. and they're like,
Yeah.
well, what's my strategy? Where does AI fit into my strategy? So there's a lot of discussion around it, but we do have to keep coming back to what's the problems that you're solving specifically, as you said, Dinesh, earlier, around the use case, not the feature. Like, what's the use case you're solving for, and is it big enough? We call it pants on fire enough. They're losing sleep over this. They're desperate to have it solved. They may or may not be paying for a different alternate solution today. What are you solving that you think is the top opportunity to go for? And then look at whether AI is actually even on the scene or not.
Yeah.
Don't put the cart before the horse type thing.
Reminding founders that it's not the first to market that wins; it's the first to product market fit that's going to win the category.
Yeah,
so
and a big element of that is the experience you're creating when you're solving those problems that you've dedicated to solve for those customers. Then the experience that you create around it, it doesn't have to include AI. It can be an amazing experience that they're just in love with your product or service or offering.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
and it's a false economy, isn't it? If you try and add AI to your product, and we see founders adding AI because they look at the investment space and go, everything seems to have created except for AI. So if I pivot into an AI company, I can raise capital. But that's the wrong reason to raise capital. You should be finding a problem that's worth solving, right?
Yeah, that's where the money is, man.
Yeah, exactly.
So can I add one more thing? This is something that I'm finding very interesting in the space as well, that I've been very successful with as well, which is almost like a ecosystem way of marketing and go-to-market strategies. So I have a client who is in the Gen AI space, taking practically like unstructured data and moving it or converting that into structured data. It's fairly like a very flexible, easy solution to address the problem that is at stake. The thing is that there are dime a dozen companies out there that are struggling with this particular problem. So what I ended up doing is I'm like connecting the dots and saying, okay, you're also a Gen AI startup. You're trying to do all this stuff, but don't try to like build this from scratch. Here's this company that is actually doing this. Why don't you take them, and be a partner with them, or like, OEM that solution and so forth. That is kind of like changing the way how people are doing go-to-market today. It's like no longer I have to build everything by myself, because as I said, Gen AI can be expensive, but they can take advantage of some of these other startups that are, solving a particular niche area, niche problem, to take that into, their problem space and address the larger solution set. So that's working out very well. And I've seen like a lot of successes with that kind of go-to-market strategies as well.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting observation. I mean, we're seeing something similar in terms of professional services companies that have been solving things manually, seeing the opportunity to take all their experience and build a product company based on Gen AI. And that, the advice that you would give to a startup, which is do things manually before you scale, they've already done that piece. And they've done it very, very, very well. So they deeply understand the customer's needs and the pains. So yeah, we're seeing that as a huge opportunity for those services business owners that want to pivot to become product companies. Maybe let's switch gears and start talking about the kind of engagement model, because the work that you do as a fractional CMO, I think is such an interesting it's such an interesting support model for founders. Because usually founders are always battling against resources. They're under-resourced. They can't afford the kind of talent they really want. And so the fractional model offers a way to solve that problem. What are sort of the benefits, and maybe also what are some of the challenges that founders should think about when engaging fractional resources like yourself?
Yeah. Great question. And I think this model of these fractional experts has always been there, I would say, but I think it largely became, front and center in the last 2 years with the economy and the way how the employment market started reacting and all that. This became like front and center, and I think it's hugely beneficial for the startup community. I'll tell you why. So here I am like a 30-year-old veteran, 30 years experienced veteran in the space, and I can practically bring in all that experience into a startup and be embedded as a part of the team and help you with like, all the different marketing strategies and go to market and everything else that you need, right? So I can help you out with all that. I bring in that expertise, but you don't have me as a full-time employee, which saves you the benefit of having to pay me as a full-time employee. So
Yeah.
you cannot hire me because you're a startup. You're probably like pre-seed or seed A or somebody like that is trying to like optimize on the costs and is focusing on like building more product than like spending money on marketing and stuff. But I bring in that kind of CMO level expertise into this and can work at a fractional cost for what somebody like me would charge in a full-time basis. So
Yeah.
that to me is a huge cost benefit thing that startup founders can benefit from. And a lot of my clients really appreciate the kind of value that I bring to the table. And it's not just me. There is a whole army of people like me out there that are doing this. But it definitely helps the startup community because you need somebody that is like seasoned out there. What I also find is like a lot of the startups recognize they want product marketing. They hire somebody really junior because that's all they can afford at the time. So they'll hire somebody off the street or like somebody that has been like 2 years in the product marketing community. Nothing wrong with them. They might be bright, but at the same time, they've not been around the block. They've not seen all the different ups and downs of being able to scale up and like how to define the go-to-market strategies and things like that, or even doing a product launch or like release marketing and things like that. And I bring in that experience. Somebody like me will come in with that experience at a fractional cost, even cheaper than like hiring a full-time junior product or marketing manager. And I can solve some of those problems for them. So that's the real deal here. And it's definitely a change in the startup scene where they're starting to recognize that the fractional models actually help better.
Yeah, 100%. What's your experience and advice on how to position that role? Because I've seen this go quite badly for startups when the founders believe that they're hiring a fractional. I call them heroes. They come in and apply all this great experience, and they give them a massive uplift in capability and step them forward. And then something happens, and they lose access to that person. And suddenly they're almost worse off than they were because now they've got all this infrastructure they don't fully understand because someone else has come in and built it, and it hasn't really been properly integrated into the company, and they haven't sort of transferred those skills. So talk through some of those challenges and the mindset that a founder needs to really get the advantage of the experience that you bring.
I would say like, include them as if they're part of your extended team, as if they are part of your C-suite, embed them in the team is super important. If you treat them as a consultant, that's where the challenge begins. If you treat them as an outsider, you don't like share all of the different strategies. If you just do like, project-based stuff and like help me with this asset or like help me with this thing and all that, I'm just being a consultant at that point, and I'm not really being a fractional CMO. But if you embed me as a part of the team, if you discuss with me, consult with me about strategies, I bring in the expertise. As I said earlier, some of the ecosystem connections that I'm making, I bring in that wealth of experience based on my connections, right? So I know which company is doing what. I'm able to like bring in that CEO to meet with this CEO, and suddenly they have a partnership that they never even imagined was possible. But that's happening only because this CEO trusted me with that strategy and saying, Dinesh, I need help like building these bridges with these areas, and I was able to do that. So that's the kind of embedding that you want in a, like I have actually like email addresses, part of these companies, my clients that I'm working for, and that's the kind of embedding that I have. It's no longer just like I'm at Stratola and they are like a different company, I'm a consultant. It's not like that. I actually have their email addresses that I work with.
I think what you say about embedding you into the leadership team is the critical difference between that and a consultant. And I think you need to, as a founder, have the right expectation about how much work a fractional resource is going to do, because you can't just have them executing 100% of the time. You've got to spend time with the team planning, interpreting the data you're getting back from customers and the operational data you're getting, to interpret that, because that's a big part of the benefit that an experienced resource brings, is being able to interpret things and see those unknown unknowns and then come up with better goals and strategies and plans based on that. And if you think you're going to bring a fractional resource in and all they're going to do is execute, you're probably going to be disappointed, right?
Yeah, exactly. You said it very well. I think that's the difference that you need to identify and say, don't make them just for like execution. Have them as a part of the planning. Make sure that you can give them the right kind of insights that you are thinking in your head as a CEO. that they can then execute on with more clarity.
Yeah. And I think another thing that we see, love to hear your experience, is you generally have to put enough time aside so that you can get this experienced person to advise and coach the founder, because they're obviously coming in, like you're coming in with all this, product marketing experience. You're probably a lot more experienced in that domain than a founder, otherwise they wouldn't hire you. So the founder should be using your time to teach them, what do I need to know about product marketing so that I can manage a product marketing manager.
Yeah.
So you have to put that time aside, and the same is true for more junior resources. Is having a really experienced senior resource to coach and mentor and do the career development for those junior resources is, that's one of the reasons why you join a mature company like a Google or a Microsoft or a Facebook, because you've got this such spread of experience, and you can get that those senior people to mentor you through your career, and that's one of the things that a fractional resource can bring. But again, it's up to the founder's sort of expectation. You can't spend a lot of time on that because you're going to be really strapped for resources. But if you spend zero time on that, you're probably missing a huge opportunity. What's been your experience with those challenges?
So I would say some of these startups don't have even like a marketing team in place, which is a problem to begin with, because then you're not really mentoring anybody. You're not like setting any frameworks that immediately somebody can like follow through and all that. So now you're like mostly like coaching the executive team and like helping them drive the narrative in the market and so forth. But in startups where there is the inclination towards, I want to build a marketing team, or like there is already a smaller marketing team that I would like you to like mentor and like coach and like help and all that. That is where I think this kind of a role is largely beneficial, as you said, where you come in with that experience, teach them the ropes of like here's what the best practices are and how you do it and all that. That team then starts like running with it. Makes my job as a fractional role even more easier, because now I'm able to really focus on the things that move and offload the things to the team and showing them the direction of like how to like actually execute it when they do the job well. So it's always like one of those things as to in a startup, like when do you hire your first marketer, when do you hire your first demand gen and this and that. It's one of those questions as to when you want your first CMO, fractional CMO, is something that comes up often. So I would say hire it when you are at the point where you're confused about like product market fit, or you're confused about like how do I start moving from like 0 to 1 or 1 to 10 or 10 to 100, like that kind of scale, or like I do not know how to like set up my marketing team and help me understand and all that. That's when you want a fractional CMO.
Yeah, that's great. It's always talking about that sort of Goldilocks zone, because as you're right, it's absolutely about timing, and that's why we like working with fractional resources such as yourself, because what we do at LeapSheep is often lay the groundwork to help a team get set up to really take advantage of the experience and skills that someone like yourself brings, and make sure they're hiring at the right time. Terri, any thoughts from you? I know you've been those fractional product manager kind of roles in startups. What's been your experience in sort of being able to embed that advice and guidance in teams?
Yeah, I agree with the exactly what Dinesh said, is like being involved in the conversations with the strategy really helps. And so I guess it really depends on the expectation of what the deal is of having that fractional resource come in and help them out. So really actually figuring out, where's their strengths, where's their weaknesses, and what do they actually need help with is a massive part of, of the experience that I've had. And then being able to, really set out a plan and make sure the right people in the team are involved, in the company are involved as well. Because if the right people don't have the right involvement and visibility, you're not going to get the right outcomes of that fractional help.
Yeah, really good, really good. Well, I can't believe an hour has gone by. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, Dinesh. I could dig into your experience in the startup space for many more hours. There's so much more information we could go into, but it's been an absolute pleasure. If anyone wants to contact you, best way is through this QR code, which I'll leave on screen for a moment. But they can also find you on LinkedIn and your website. Is that right?
Yes, they can find me in all those places. This is just a Calendly link to connect with me and book a meeting. But thank you, Kirk, and thank you, Terri, for this great conversation. You guys have been around the block as well, and you have seen it all, done it all, and that experience shows through in the conversation. It has been a fantastic, chat back and forth. Loved it, and I am really looking forward to seeing some of the wonderful things coming out of LeapSheep as well. You guys have been doing a phenomenal job, and I'm looking forward to working closely with you as well.
Excellent, thank you so much, Dinesh. It's really a pleasure to be collaborating to help founders and solve that mortality rate, so we can radically increase the production rate at the other end.
Of course.
So thanks for everyone that's joined us. Lastly, if you're looking for advice and guidance with your startup, we have a fabulous offer for founders. If you want to chat with an expert startup building advisor like Terri or myself from LeapSheep, we offer a startup builder strategy session. It's a free 45-minute session at the moment. We'll help diagnose what are the challenges that your particular startup has in getting to product market fit, and we'll help you build the right goals, the right strategy, and the right actions based on our experience in working with thousands of startups. And we'll give you that plan. We'll tell you how our service works. You can engage us to execute that plan with you. You can take the plan, execute it yourself, or if you think you've got a better approach, you can put the plan in the bin and do your own thing. But it will be a fabulous 45 minutes of your time if you want to access that. So thanks very much. We'll see you in 2 weeks. We have a very special guest in 2 weeks, Peter Saradig Evans from the Australian startup Try With Mirror, who is going absolutely gangbusters, doing a bunch of amazing things in terms of building in the open. If you want to follow him on LinkedIn, we are LeapSheep, and we are working flat out to flip the startup success rate and help founders reach product market fit and avoid the startup graveyard. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.